Lovely stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So, welcome everyone. There's a lot more seats.
Yeah.
You want 2 chairs?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I brought out a few really nice special acoustic guitars that we can all have a little look and a try of, and kind of see the differences that body shape, tonewoods, tension, all of that stuff makes. So all of these are luthier made, but as you know, you can get mass manufactured guitars, and the differences between something that's built in a mass factory or something that's built start to finish by one person, and what really is the world of those differences. So we can kind of delve a bit into it and get a bit hands-on with it today. So there's, in my mind, there's 2 big things that make the biggest difference in acoustic guitars. Anyone want to hazard a guess at what those 2 things might be?
Wood.
And the player.
The wood and the player? Good guesses, but in my mind, it's the tension that the body's under and the air pressure that's built into the body. So a very loud acoustic guitar would be built under a higher tension with thinner plates that create a lot of air pressure to project the sound. So you can build, that's why you get spruce and rosewood guitars and loads of, that's like a common combination. You get loads of different styles of spruce tops with rosewood back and sides, and they all sound completely different because of the thickness of the wood, the air pressure that it's built under, and the tension that the overall body's under. So the tension is mainly due to neck angle and string thickness, but neck break angle is the biggest one, and the thickness of the woods is all about the air pressure. So that's why you get super projecting guitars that are super lively, or guitars that really take a good old hammering to try and make them come alive because they're super thick bodies.
You have to think about an everyday car that lasts for years, or a racing car that after 2 hours it needs a new engine, you know. Not that those guitars will be worn out after 2 hours, but they're closer to breaking point than something that, you know, is reliable for many years.
You see this with high-end classical, like master build classical guitars. They're light as a feather, and you tap on them and the whole body vibrates all the way up the neck. And when you strum it, you can actually feel a huge amount of air being projected from this instrument. So you can play a cheap classical guitar and it sounds like a pleasantly fine guitar, but it's not until you have experienced the super high end of the spectrum that you realise that the air pressure makes a massive difference, because that is actually what's generating the tone, the amount of air being pushed out of it. And with a nice thin top and a thin back and stiff sides, the top and the back can move in synergy with each other and push as much air out as possible. Yeah.
Does the sound of the sound hole affect how much and
Very much so.
Yeah.
The sound, the position of the sound hole and the size of the sound hole make a lot of difference. Sometimes guitars build up so much air movement that the sound hole itself is not sufficient enough. So you see guitars that have a sound port in the side. That's got two things. But the sound port in the side is mainly to release the amount of air you're moving around. There's one real nice benefit to a sound port in the side, and that is every standard guitar is not designed for the player to listen to. is designed for the other person. Yeah, as the player, you're kind of behind the speaker. If you have a soundboard in the side, then you can actually hear exactly how the guitar makes a lot of difference. And if you're just a player by yourself at home, it makes real sense to look for a guitar with soundboard in the side. Yeah.
Or
the
get out your
experience
drills
is-
and cut your own one.
It makes it easier to get lost picks out as well.
It does indeed.
And then the position of the sound hole. If you were to think of a vibrating plate and you throw a lot of marbles on, those marbles will all kind of resonate to one spot. And that is the optimum position for the sound hole.
So there was a Chinese luthier making some wonderful guitars. I can't remember his name for the life of me, unfortunately. But he built acoustic guitars, and the sound holes were all in different places on every single one of his guitars. And this was exactly the thing that he did. He sent a vibrational energy through the tops before he glued the bodies together, and then saw where the ball bearings would collect as an item, and then that's where he put the sound port, because that's where the lowest density of the wood is, and where the most sound will get projected out of it.
Where do they tend to be, those sound holes? They're presumably in the upper bout.
In the upper bout, so they're in a traditional spot, but then you might see them to
Okay.
one side more than the other, sometimes a bit lower down.
Mm.
So you're talking about smaller fractions, not crazy places like in the bottom bout.
Mm.
So yeah, you are talking small fractions here, but with acoustic guitars, even the smallest fractions make a world of difference. Yeah.
And the thickness of the top is also on a high-end guitar. The top is not the same thickness all the way. Yeah. So generally they thin out towards the sides, as do the struts. Yeah, the struts get all scalloped out, and it makes a lot of difference. Strut work makes a lot of difference in how the top moves, and a strut needs to be strong enough to hold the tension of the guitar, hold the guitar together, but then it needs to be thin enough to allow for that movement. So the struts are generally very narrow but high up, so you have a maximum strength rather than wide and less narrow. And then they get all scalloped out. And I don't know, I haven't got any breedlove guitars here, but if you don't see the breedlove guitars, the struts are all scalloped out in the length as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. What is that called again?
They call it cascade bracing.
Cascade bracing.
Yeah.
So normal guitars, the struts are just the same thickness to the cap to the end, and then they're scalloped out. And in the breedlove, they're wavy. Yeah.
But with the strutting, you kind of touched on it. The height of the braces is where the strength lies, not the width of the braces. So you get some guitars where the bracing is really like getting close to 2 inches thick, but then they're super paper thin, and that really allows for the most projection to happen. So if you have a guitar with super thick bracing, then it takes a lot of hard work to get that body moving, and there's a lot of material that's dampening the top down. And if you get nice thinner braces, you actually get more strength, but then also more movement.
Yeah.
So it's a longer lasting, better sounding instrument. Yeah.
So the cascade bracing, would the distances there be related to the wavelengths that you want to get projected?
Yeah. So there's kind of like an art form really called tuning the top. So you would, as a luthier, you build the top plate, then you glue the braces on before you glue the box together, and then you'd tap test that top plate, and then you'd shave away the bracing until you get the optimal ring from the top. and it's amazing how much of a difference that makes. So you put the bracing on, and it could just be like a donk, you know, dead as a dodo type of sound. And as soon as you start shaving bits off the braces, it starts going dum, 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 dum. You know, it gets louder and more and more resonant to a point until you know, don't have enough material and it will all fall apart. So it's all a balancing act, and it's quite a fine work. But tuning the top is something that can get very technical. Yeah.
So old violins and cellos, where the arches were all scooped out. This was what it was all about, and getting the right note out of the wood. If we look at the Wiener guitars, for instance, they're all tuned bodies, just based on an old-fashioned idea. And they will take all the materials, their top, their braces, and they tap test them, and they bring them all to tune. So all the materials are ringing to the same note before they stick it together.
So that's basically using oscilloscope, and then you tap test the bodies and use an oscilloscope, and then tune it to a certain frequency, like an A or a D. And then before you even glue the box together, you've got the top ringing at a note, you've got your X brace ringing at a note, you've got your back ringing at a note, and they all match. Yeah. So in theory, when you glue it all together, it's not necessarily like if you tune it to a D, it's going to sound great in D. That it doesn't work like that. It means that the vibrational energy should transfer through all of it at similar rates. So if you think of knocking a steel railing, you know, that vibrational energy transfers through it really quick, and you hear this brilliant ring throughout the whole lot of it, and then knock a bit of wood, and that same vibrational energy will travel through it, but it's less audible. And also different thicknesses of woods and different densities of material, that vibrational energy will travel through it at different rates. So by tap testing and tuning, in theory, that vibrational energy transfers through it at similar rates. And when you get it really good, that's when you get into kind of Stradivarius levels of, you know, violins and cellos, where they're worth house money, because you just pluck a note and it fills up the whole room, you know. Yeah. If we pass this guitar around and you look down it like this and like that, you should see a bevel. So.
And the body is
I was
deeper.
taking my watch off when you said which way to look. Like, which way am I looking?
So
I didn't see.
if you look down the top like
Oh, I
that,
can see the bevel, yeah.
and down
yeah.
the top like that, so
Oh, blimey.
that has been built into that guitar. You might have known as belly, where the bridge pulls the top up. Well, this has actually been built with a belly in it, and it actually makes the top far stronger, because your braces are sitting on a curved surface, so it doesn't want to pull it up as much as a flat surface.
Is there anything, what's that top?
That's a bear claw spruce.
Spruce, so
Yeah.
there's a limit to arching, like?
There is a limit. Generally, the maximum is about 5 degrees. This one's pushing that limit. Yeah, it's
There's
pretty
no
much
danger of a
on.
slip down the grain.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's heavy,
So-
isn't it?
it is heavy. Yeah.
The making surface of the struts are under that arch. And often they make an arch table where the struts fit in, then they plane them all up, and then they glue it together.
Yeah.
This guitar we did quite a YouTube video on, because there's some really beautiful pictures, and there's a lot to say about it.
So yeah, inherently, flat surfaces under tension want to warp and move and kind of break apart. They're not that strong, and the bracing helps with that, but there's a lot of people, especially luthier-made instruments, where they get a dished out sanding table and would sand the tops down to a certain degree bevel before bracing it, and you end up with a much stronger guitar, but also a much louder guitar.
So that's been sanded to that shape rather than bent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's been sanded into the top, which also means that it's thinner on the sides. Yeah. Which allows that top to really work. Yeah.
You're treating it more like a lens.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
But you can see also how you bring strength in, instead of having something thin, by having it, and the struts being arched out as well. So you actually have something that's really thin, but the structural is like, it's thicker. So it can handle the tension way better. Therefore you can make it thinner. And if you make it thinner, you get more projection out of it.
I guess woods is the next topic, really, isn't it? I mean, there's lots of topics we can talk about.
Can we just look at these other two here? Are they flat? Have they been bellied or are they flat?
This one does have a belly, but it's
Usually,
a lot less.
if
Yeah.
we usually talk about the belly, then that doesn't mean just generally a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, the tension of the strings will pull the top up a bit. That's a natural belly.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. Yeah. No, that is gravity.
No, that is beer.
But if we talk about the belly, it generally means that the guitar is
It's a bit
losing
more-
strength.
Bit more
Yeah.
visible.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that's a bad
What
thing.
makes this
Yeah.
a Gorman?
O'Gorman, yeah.
Where,
So it's made,
where's each made as you hand them?
so
Oh God, it is really.
this one is a Dehaan. It's made by Frank Dehaan over in the Netherlands, in Hailu. The one you have in your hands is Brendan O'Gorman, and he makes O'Gorman guitars, and they're from Red Roof in Cornwall. So it's relatively local to us. And this one is a JKM made by Jacob Mina, and he is a builder from Northern Ireland. So he was working for
That's
Loudon.
half the weight of that one.
Yeah,
If that.
he was working for Loudon for 6.5 years. Worked through the ranks there, and has been designing guitars for over 16 years.
Yeah.
What wood's that? This is that's cedar.
That's a cedar top,
Yeah.
Western red cedar, with a black limber back and sides and a black limber neck. But the weight relief comes from carbon fibre stiffening rods in the neck and a titanium truss rod. So those two factors bring a massive amount of weight relief to it.
It'll be different than.
Yeah.
I know.
So especially if you look at classical guitars, it's more extreme. The real good stuff weighs nothing. So when you pick it up, then you know you're onto something really good.
Yeah.
Does he often build them with an inbuilt mic?
That's for the Empire series. So he's got two series, the Foundation series and the Empire series. The Foundation series has a K&K Pure system, which is just a passive electrical system.
Okay.
And the Empire series is the K&K Trinity, which is the one with the microphone, is active. And it actually has a little splitter box that it comes with, so you can split the microphone and the piezo separately and control the volume of each, which is it's a really nice.
Acoustic builders, not in general, but more and more adding the electrics to acoustics just because it's a
Yeah,
given they'll be added in some shape or form.
yeah. If you're mass manufacturing, say like Tanglewood or Taylor or any of the big brands that build an awful lot of guitars, they buy the electrics or brand their own electrics because they buy them in such big bulk. It saves a lot of money. So what may cost you £150 to install your own electrics will cost you 20 quid, 40 quid difference in the price of guitars. So it's actually a bit of a no-brainer these days. Even if you don't really use it, it will potentially save you money in the long run if you do want to use it. Yeah. And it doesn't really, even the preamp box inside doesn't really take away from anything with the guitar. Like I was mentioning with the air pressure, the top and the back are what are doing the heavy lifting. You want the sides to be as rigid as possible. So the days of all solid instruments are kind of, especially in luthier made instruments, are kind of done. Most of these guitar, guys will laminate their sides still, and it's just thinner layers of solid tone woods to get that stiffness there. So you want the sides as stiff as possible to let the top and the back really move. If everything's moving, then nothing's moving in a unified way of being able to push the sound in the right way. It's kind of like dropping a stone in a pond and watching the ripples, and dropping a stone just after the other, and you see all the ripples bounce off each other. If you throw one stone in, it will ripple really beautifully and it will go the whole length of the pond. But if you cannon the stones one just after the other, it will die out pretty quickly because all those ripples are bouncing off each other. So it's a little bit like that.
Another thing is, of course, full solid wood instruments are very sensitive beings and very easy to break and expensive to repair. And as Ryan said, the sides are only there for structural reasons, not for tonal qualities. So it makes sense to have a laminated sides. Yeah. If you do a lot of gigs, for instance, it'd be best just to have laminate back and sides, so you have a guitar that can stand a few knocks, and a solid top for the tone. And of course, it's a lot cheaper to produce that. But full solid is always the top of the tree. That's where the real money is.
So there's different bracing patterns which make an awful lot of difference. On all steel string guitars you get what's called an X brace. So that's a big X that goes down the body like this, and you can see it through the sound hole on the top. And that's there as your kind of main brace that holds the whole thing together, but also allows for movement across the top. There's what's called a transverse brace, which is that's the biggest brace in the acoustic guitar and creates all the structure on the top of the sound hole here. If that was too thin, then you'd end up with warping around the sound hole because it's a hole cut in the wood. That's a weak spot in the body. And then down here you'll end up with small braces, like popsicle braces we call them, that just help give it a bit more kind of structure in the whole box, but still allow for movement. Those popsicles, lots of different luthiers have different ways of doing it. Most of them, like you have the X brace down here, and most will just carry on doing a few popsicles at different lengths, getting progressively shorter and shorter. That's kind of the common way, and then you have another one up there and another one up there. That seems to be the modern way of bracing, which allows for a lot of movement in the top. But JKM, for instance, he's got a hybrid bracing structure, whereas X is a little less pronounced, so it finishes a bit higher up the bottom bout, and then he fan braces like a traditional classical guitar across the space on the bottom. So that's the other kind of traditional
bracing or backwards bracing.
Yeah.
So the X is right up or lower down.
And the fan brace is very traditional on classical guitars. So on classical guitars you have a transverse brace, another flat brace down the bottom, and then just a fan of braces down on the bottom belt. But it does mean if you did that on a steel string guitar, you'd just walk the top completely out of shape. So without that X brace, there's not enough structure to take the amount of tension that the strings give it. But classical guitars are under a lot less tension, so it means that there's a lot more movement to be had there. So doing a hybrid of the two is allowing, because it's a shorter scale, the bridge is a little bit further down than these other two, and it's a different kind of body design. You can get away with the fan and still have a lovely amount of movement in the top.
There's an awful lot. Bracing is something we can talk about for hours.
It's
There's
a big subject.
loads and loads of different styles of bracing. Often it's also uneven bracing, so it's not symmetrical. But if we want to go into that, it's quite a long technical discussion. And if you look back in history on all the different bracing patterns that have been tried out, there's an awful lot there. And all the different reasons. It all has a reason. And this is kind of, the X brace is kind of the standard bracing most acoustic guitars are based on. Right. And then the other stiffening point is of course the bridge, and the bridge, underneath the bridge is what we call bridge plate, which is a thin piece of wood. It stops the ball ends sticking into the top, which is a bit harder, and the grain runs the other way, the other direction. And it's just to stiffen this area itself out. And the place of the bridge is the other thing that is very important in the resonance of the guitar. So often the guitar that joins at the 12th fret, because most of our guitars now join at the 14th fret. That gives us a little bit more playable area there than joining at the 12th. But if you join at the 12th, you get the bridge sit actually. Yeah. Yeah, there's a light there. Yeah.
Nice.
You get the bridge actually sits more center in the lower bout.
So this bridge, because it's, you're saving 2 inches up here, the bridge can move 2 inches lower down here. And the widest part of the bottom bout here is the part with the most movement in it. So if you can get the bridge to that widest line, you're going to get the most movement in the top.
I kind of always thought of the bridge as being like the cone of the speaker, and so you're trying to drive the body in and out
Yeah.
to create the volume,
Yeah.
and the sound hole to just relieve the pressure to allow it to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great analogy for it, yeah.
Yeah, you can see the sound hole as the baseboard of the speaker. Yeah. But yeah, that bridge is basically the coil of the speaker. That is where the driving happens. Yeah. And then different type of woods is what makes a lot of difference in what kind of tonal landscape you get out of it. So if we look at full mahogany, was always a staple of Martin. You get a really warmish, bluesy, mellow sound out of it. If you want more sparkle, then you go for something back in sides that are kind of harder, so the sound bounces off more rather than driving the whole guitar. And that makes quite a lot of difference. This is where a Brazilian rosewood, is still one of the best materials for the back and side of the guitar. If you look to the difference of Brazilian rosewood and Indian rosewood is actually not that suitable. It's rosewood, and But there's so many different types of rosewood in a gene pool of rosewoods.
There's over 250 different species of rosewood within the
Yeah.
rosewood genus. And Indian rosewood and Brazilian rosewood are just two of those species.
So in terms of the grain structure, what are you looking for?
Good question. In terms of the grain structure, a straight grain is not all that essential. We want a straight grain structure that is in the fabrication easy to bend without cracking, yeah? And a structure what we call a hook and loop. So you need to be thinking more of like Velcro, yeah? And the grain structure in Brazilian rosewood is exactly that. Yeah. On the other hand, if you then look at old guitars of Brazilian rosewood, they're usually full of cracks and full of repairs. But that is kind of goes together by the kind of different movement in the grain. Yeah.
Certainly our oak porch is
Yeah.
split and cracked, and
Yeah.
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 So like the straight grain is important for the top,
Yeah.
but the back and sides is a lot less important. Especially the sides, like I said, they're just there as stiffening kind of
so are
agents.
you looking for a slow growing wood so that the grain is quite dense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About the wood itself, yeah. Slow grown woods are best to be sourced on higher altitudes. Yeah. So that is one thing in the wood qualities. And then there's another thing in wood quality is harvesting of the wood. So if the wood gets harvested late autumn, then there's less sap in the wood by itself. So the wood is already in that kind of sleeping mode before it's harvested. And it creates a better type of timber by the time it comes to aging and putting it to use to this kind of use for making a guitar.
So there's a few spruces you see the most different varieties in, and you can get spruces with a really wide grain structure and spruces with a really, really tight grain structure. This one, for instance, is a little bit in the middle. You can
You
get
call that bear claw.
this is bear claw because of the
Cross-graining.
cross graining
Yeah.
in there. It kind of looks like a bear's scratch the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that type of effect. This is still an alpine spruce. So alpine spruces generally come from Switzerland and they're grown in the Alps at a higher altitude. And because of the kind of cold temperatures and the height above sea level, less oxygen in the air, these trees take a much longer time, twice as long to actually grow into maturity. So you get a grain structure which is nice and dense, and generally get quite a straight grain structure as well. You also
With
get
no telegraph post.
no, no, never. You also get what's called Swiss moon spruce, and you might have seen this term getting knocked around every now and then. Generally, smaller luthiers will have this, and what Walter was saying with harvesting in late autumn when the tree's kind of gone into its almost hibernation stage for the winter, the sap returns generally to the base of the tree, so it doesn't need to feed so much from its roots. It can feed basically from itself. So you end up with a wood that you don't need to age quite as long, and you get a lot less waste from, and there's not as much kind of sap that you've got to age out of the wood before you can use it. So Swiss moon spruce, weirdly enough, is after autumn stage. Generally in the winter, you're talking like late October, early November kind of period. at moonlight when it's cut down, generally at full moon. I don't know how much of a massive difference this makes. It gets quite technical, and people throw a lot of things out there, so it might just be a bunch of marketing spiel. But
Well, I mean, there's always the tidal effect due to the moon,
yes,
which at full moon and new moon is going to be up, because that's when you get the spring tides rather than the neap tides.
yeah.
But how much that would affect how much is going up and down a tree?
See, this is what I'm unsure about. But if you see moon spruce, it's Swiss alpine spruce that's been chopped down at new moon, full moon, and different stages of the moon cycle, and always at night, harvested at night, underneath the moon. Yeah. It's something to do about the hibernation of the
The
tree.
lumber jack has dropped his trousers and is facing the front. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit like that.
You haven't heard the nipples then. We'll play a guitar with moon spruce and you can hear the difference.
played a bomb note.
But the density of the grain is what is most important.
And altitude makes a massive difference though. You
Yeah.
see alpine spruce or spruces that have been grown at altitude and they're always nice tight grains. Where if you see sea level spruce, it's generally a lot wider. And you can't really get away from that, especially in the rate that we're chopping down trees now.
So when you get something that looks really pretty, like a quilted maple, where does that fall in the level of how the body moves? How that?
It's different altogether. Because now we talk about quite a hardwood. Quilted maple is generally used for capping or laminating, just to make things pretty. The fact it's quilted means also that the grain structure is all over the place. But there's two problems. It wouldn't be suitable for the top of an acoustic guitar unless it's a laminate. And it's hard to work. Because if you have a nice straight grain and you have to say, write a plane over it, it will cut a nice thin layer of it. If the grain goes all over the place, it will japper and you know, rip it out and it goes smooth. And so, as a product to work, is far more difficult. Yeah. So where we see this is like on top of electric guitars, yeah, where they use what we call a cap. So you have like a mahogany body, and then they put a quilted maple plate on it, you know. But this maple is all filled in before it's finished, yeah. So there's all a layer of wood filler put over the top to be able to get that smooth lacquered finish, because you couldn't get that just out in natural wood itself.
Right.
But if we go back to the grain structure of the top, we want a nice straight grain. The wider the grain, the bassier the guitar, the tighter the grain, the more the high notes, the clearer the high notes. The tops is like a bookcase, yeah, so it's one lumber book cut through the middle and I pop it open. Yeah. So if we want, and then we've got a different in grain width, yeah, so where the outside and the center of the tree is. And whether we use like that or like that makes a difference in the tonal quality, yeah. So with the wider grain in the center of the guitar, we get a more bassy guitar. With wider grain to the outside, we get a more sparkly guitar, yeah, a brighter guitar. And then of course how the sound reflects onto the back and sides makes also quite a difference. So you, before you start building the guitar, you want to make that decision of what kind of tonal landscape you go for. and then you build towards that. And yeah, that is really important in how you treat the top and how you cut the top and how you, whether you do it like this or like that. And then of course the back and sides, like I said, on the mahogany you get a pretty nice mellow sound. You get a harder back and sides, maple for instance, but then that's generally in a laminate, but it will still give that same effect, having that maple there. It'll be far harder, so instead of flexing it, it will bounce off and create a different pattern. If we then look back at rosewood and a Brazilian rosewood towards Indian rosewood, like the D28, which is just straight lines. If you look back at the Daan, that is Siricoti. At the moment, Siricoti is the closest to Brazilian rosewood. So it's got this, the grain structure got this kind of hook and loop pattern. It's not deadly straight, but it is good enough to bend without any problems. So it's still very workable. It's not an easy wood to work with.
Is this one solid or laminate? Size?
That's all solid.
So it's all solid.
Yeah. And about the cutting of the woods, we talk all about quarter sawn woods. Yeah. So the grain lies exactly straight when it sits on its edge.
If, that's my question. One of my brothers is a proper carpenter, and
Yeah.
I was just asking about doing some quarter sawn / cut rubber.
Yeah.
When if you have your timber to make a guitar,
Yeah.
how is it first? You'll receive it from / cut or quarter sawn from a tree.
Yeah.
What's the first cut the luthier will want to be made or make?
The quarter sawn.
Right, always.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
Generally,
And that's the smallest part
Yeah.
out of the tree in any case.
if you get slabs for certain
Yeah.
uses, then generally you'd measure up each component. You'd rest that material in your workshop to before you even do any cuts, let it get any of its warping out and let it kind of acclimatise to your atmosphere. Then you do any cuts that you need to do for the certain components, and before you even go ahead and start putting those together, you let those rest again and let it get all of its warping out before you even start building. So you'd want to cut all your quarter sawn pieces first, but say you've got a piece for the neck, a piece for your neck block, your end block, your top, your back. You want to cut all of those into the pieces that you want to work from, and then let it rest for a month, and then it will warp away and do its thing. And then before you even start putting it together, then you can look at flattening it out after it's really acclimatized. Yeah.
So the old boys, they used to keep records. So they would have their wood stack, and the wood stack is already cut in top plates and back plates, and, neck lumps. And they would weigh it. They might not have had the option to measure the humidity and control that. So they would weigh it, and then they note in their book the weight of that lump of wood. And then they weigh till the ultimate weight. So the drier the wood gets, the more weight it loses. And then they decide by that when they start using it. And that is how they used to control it. So the old Spanish boys, they used to all catalogue their woods in weights. Yeah.
So you're looking for kind of an exponential change over time, that it'll drop in weight, and then over time the change will get less and less and less.
Yeah.
And so you're then looking for when it's nearly stopped moving, because
Yeah.
it'll never completely stop moving.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, of course the atmospheric circumstances change as well, you know. But yeah, that was where they find the optimum point of working woods. And in the guitar it's very important because the woods are so thin that, I mean, we've seen guitars where, for instance, the neck blocks and the tail blocks will dry out more over time than the rest of the structure, and it makes a total mess of the guitar.
That's
So-
because the thicker piece of wood is holding the moisture for longer.
Yeah. And in the modern builds, now the neck blocks and the tails are laminates or stacked. It's not laminate as a laminated wood, but what they do is they cut this piece of wood in sections, they turn the grain around and then stick it back together. So it be more stable over a longer period.
So there's a neck block in here inside the internals, and then an end cap down here, which is another block of wood that hold the top, the back and the sides together, and the neck one holds the neck in. So back in the day we used to just have one big block of wood in there, cut a dovetail slot into it, and then make the opposite dovetail into the neck and fit those two pieces together. The problem is what they found, you're gluing this dovetail in, but then because of the grain structure of the wood, the grain's going the same way as the top. You're talking, 50s through to like the 80s, people are still doing it. So your dovetail join would be glued onto end grain, and end grain doesn't glue well at all.
It's not as strong either.
No, it's not as strong at all. So what a lot of luthiers are doing now is stacking multiple blocks up together and either alternating the grain structure of those blocks or facing them in a different way, so you're gluing that neck into side grain, not end grain. So you end up with a much stronger neck join here. And generally they're built as like an L shape, so you've got another block which runs down the bottom of the fingerboard. So you've got straight grain running like that, and then straight grain running like that. So you're gluing the fingerboard and the top to straight grain and the neck into straight grain, and there's no glue joints there on the end grain. Yeah. So all of these guitars have that feature of the stacked neck blocks and no end grain gluing. And actually these two, I think all three of them are bolt-on necks as well. So it's a new thing that's kind of happening, and it makes the world of tech work so much easier. So there's two Allen key bolts. It's an old school mortise and tenon join, and they're bolted on with two Allen keys. So you can just pop your hand in the sound hole and undo two big bolts, and then the neck should, you've got to take the
Sometimes
fingerboard
it
off.
depends on where the top
Yeah.
joins.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an Allen bolt under there as well. And a blocked tail, so the fretboard sits on a block as well. Where in the past this piece of the fretboard was usually the awkward bit that goes all over the place, and it makes the rest of the guitar not so playable anymore, unless it dips down and then it was out of the way.
So if this was in the workshop with no strings on it, you blindfolded me, gave me an Allen key, that neck would be off in 5 minutes. Simple as,
So the neck extension of the body isn't glued onto the body.
No.
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 Yeah.
And remember when we were talking about shimming this morning, those necks you can shim. So if you have a problem with the neck angle, then it's not a problem in most guitars. And if you have a problem on a neck angle, it can be a real nightmare. You know. We had not long ago a £7,000 loan and the neck angle was at 1 degree out. And we couldn't get it right.
No.
Yeah, I could get it right, high action.
Yeah.
Whack it a bit harder. But because there wasn't a bolt on, and if you want to steam a dovetail, you can take a dovetail apart. We've got a brace that grabs the body and pushes the heel up that way, and then you drill a hole, or hopefully you have a marker you could take out and drill a hole through there, and then you can blow steam into it and then slowly try to push it off. But it's a very lengthy process. Your chance something goes wrong is quite big, and
The chance you damage the finish
yeah,
is
it's something you
massive,
have to
right?
knife it all along, yeah, so the lacquer won't break. So you have to go with a standing knife all along that edge to stop that tearing out. Yeah.
or you do the even more crazy way and get a nice flat Japanese saw, and
Yeah,
you cut the dovetail off, and you just go down the end of the heel on the neck, cut the dovetail off, and then you remove the dovetail with chisels afterwards and build a new dovetail onto the neck. But that's
it's a shame.
it's a
really.
shame doing that. Yeah, yeah. But worst case scenarios.
Don't try that in the shed.
So the new IKEA option with a couple of Allen keys is
Yeah, it's
way
the
to
way
go.
forward.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hopefully no missing parts. As is everything from IKEA.
No worry, we stopped the Allen bolts.
Yeah.
Shall we have a listen to some different soundscapes?
Yeah.
got them there.
Yeah.
Ah, nice. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's all prepared.
Is that a luthier special?
Yeah.
Swiss Army special.
Yeah.
I suppose it goes with the moon maple.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can only do that on the full moon, you know that. Huh? Don't do that in the daytime.
Would anyone like to play it? Give them a go?
There's one more thing on those guitars.
Okay.
Nuts, saddles, old-fashioned bone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a place for new bone and grab that and all that stuff, because it's consistent material. The old-fashioned bone used to be camel shin bone. Yeah, camel shin bone is the highest level of density and consistency. These days is generally bovine bone, but camel bone is still widely available.
There's also one other feature now, talking about nuts and saddles.
Slots.
I'd just like to point out, this guitar is really quite obvious, so pass this round again. But have a look, it's quite difficult to see, the nut will be easier. Is relieve the back of the nut slot, and the same with the front of the saddle slot here. So they kind of taper open, and this is so there's less friction being caught up in either the nut and the saddle. He's done it on every single string there, both in the nut and the saddle.
And it's also a really good way of insulating.
Really nice way. It's something that you don't see on mass manufactured guitars at all, and takes some skill, takes the right type of files, but means that you don't get sticky strings and nut or saddle slots. They're brilliantly intonated, and you still get all of the same downward force that you would get with a full slot. Yeah.
So, one more thing about those saddles, they're 7mm saddles.
Yeah.
Either gives you more space to get the intonation right, B, in guitars, electric guitars the same. Everything goes narrower and narrower and thinner. If you think something that creates a vibration, if you had a speaker and you put it on the tabletop flat, you resonate way more off the tabletop than if you hold it on the side and have only a small area to touch it. So I'm all in favor of the kind of wider saddle, you know. It brings more tone, more vibration into the top itself.
You're seeing more and more luthiers these days make them with the 7mm saddles rather than, say, like the thinner 3mm saddles. Intonation is such a big benefit that even if you negate all of the tonal options, just the intonation itself is brilliant to have a 7mm saddle. It gives you all of the room for manoeuvre. Yeah.
All those guitars are fitted with 18:1 machine heads. Yeah. You can get these days 21:1, but 21:1 is a bit, that's still 18. Yeah. 21 is a bit much.
They're all actually on the Goto 510
Yeah.
18:1 machine heads, which are just the most beautiful machine heads in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I see why they all use them.
These buttons are particularly nice to use.
Yeah, they're super ergonomic and just feel really, really nice
But
and smooth.
yeah, if you have a cheap guitar with 12:1 machine heads, then got too far, got back, yeah. Just the ratio of those machine heads is so perfect that you can't and you're there, you know. And you don't have that up and down. If it's a 21, then you've got maybe more precision, but then you're fiddling. I find them too much of a fiddle. I find this is the most perfect ratio, 18:1. And that means that you spin this 18 times and that goes around one time. Yeah, that's what it means.
So, I think we should play some guitars now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's spruce on Siricoti, so that gives a brighter sound. That's all mahogany, so that's really sweet and mellow. That's the cedar top, so that gives you also that sweet and mellowness. But then the black limba is quite hard in itself, so it actually brightens it up again.
Nice balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've played all of them, Andrew.
Not that one.
No?
Not the Dahan, no. These two are kind of similar. They got the bass is quite similar, very rich. But I don't know about that one.
Play a bit of that one, please.
Do you two play guitar? You do.
I'm lefty though, so I'm
Right.
much used to that to hear.
Oh, we
Especially
all, we all feel sorry for you.
And no one feels sorry for me. It's got,
No, you're right, you
lifetime
don't.
of not being felt sorry for me.
So the basses are quite thick, aren't they? Oh, beautiful treble, isn't it? That's that one.
So how easy the harmonics come out
hole on the top. Sorry,
Yeah.
Professor.
Yeah, you can hear it. Yeah,
Does that really adjust your hearing?
I can hear. Yes, I mean, I hadn't thought of it when I was playing, but it is very, very clear. Very clear indeed. Yeah,
But you play traditional.
classical.
Yeah. So if you, like Nick, his ear is closer to that soundboard. It's quite a difference.
Oh, I see. Right, so you've got one over there. isn't it?
So if you keep playing,
Yeah, it really makes it.
It sounds very different over here from right on top of it.
fills up the whole room.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a small.
Yeah, small body but big voice, like a chihuahua.
Hell of a sustain on it, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Goes on for years, yeah.
Really nice.
As do I.
Let's move over to this one, the marking one.
Is that solid as well? It's not laminate on the sides.
No,
These are
These are
all,
all solid.
all
we're
solids.
all
yeah.
solid, yeah. There's no laminates here. But what we try to do is give you directions of things, you know, rather than go down too far down the line. Of course we can play Tanglewood, you know, yeah.
That same piece again, so
Yeah, the same piece again.
So you can really hear how that side port is making a lot more air come out of the instrument. This one feels a little bit less loud, more subtle.
mm.
Thank you.
Is that banned from the shop?
Well, it just means it's going to get charged twice as much next time.
difference now that that port's been taken away.
Yeah, yeah,
Just something I'd never really thought about before.
yeah.
I saw some emerald guitars. I've got one about
Yeah.
there that's kind of like half angled.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
But emerald is a completely different idea.
Yeah, well, they're completely composite.
yeah, yeah. The carbon fibre, it doesn't matter too much if you take material away from the top. Whereas on all wood guitars, solid wood guitars, the more you take away from the top, the less you have. So because the sides are there for that structural integrity, cutting a hole in the side doesn't make a massive difference. And the benefits that a side will give in terms of volume that you hear yourself and overall projection, it actually makes sense to have. Yeah.
So if you want to do a real muddy Glastonbury, have an emerald.
Yeah.
You can jump in the pool and still play it.
Or when those banjos start playing, you can use it to paddle the guitar.
Or smack them.
Hey, but those are two totally different guitars.
Yeah.
Very different.
But you see how that, if we were to change the sound for a color, how different color they are.
Yeah.
And that's not just because of two different guitars, but it's just about the quality of the woods and answers one or the other. But we have two quite mellow guitars. Because Chuck the Haan in the mix now.
So just looking at the way they're constructed there, if you went for a slightly thicker bridge insert, you could actually very easily swap between left and right handed
Yeah.
because
You
you
have
have
enough
enough space
in
there
there,
to
yeah.
get relief.
Yeah. Thing is left-handed are braced in a slightly different way.
That's the other way around.
It's the other way around on the bracing. So,
But the bridge angle is the main difference. Because a classical guitar doesn't matter. You just put the strings the other way around and you'll be right.
It's a very different beast, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one with the widest neck you've played, well, almost that classical sized neck.
It does feel wide, yes.
Yeah.
It's a more substantial neck than the other two, yeah. It's got a more balanced sound, I think.
Oh, I like that size, really
The,
in between those two in a way.
Yeah. The trebles aren't quite so sweet as on the Irish guitar. The overall sound is, well, the basses have really come out, haven't they? That's the muddy, I think.
defined bass end. Yeah.
Who made this one?
This one's made by Frank de Haan in Haarlem in the Netherlands. Yeah.
But we talk all those guitars, the balance in tone and the way how each note rolls into the next one. This is all a really high step.
Oh, it's a 12 and inlay.
No, it's a sticker I put on.
This has got a brightness to it that I quite like.
bright, not harsh.
This, I've noticed the proportion between the belly, if you like, and if that's considered as, I mean, I'm just looking around how different they all are. Is that, I mean, obviously there's a whole mix of sound, loads and loads of reasons.
Yeah.
But what makes them, and if you decide which proportion of it?
There's a new thing that's kind of coming around in the world of masonry, where this section, bottom bounce, generates the most tone. So there's luthiers that laminate these parts at the top and stiffen the top bout.
Do they consider them separate, if you like, the bottom?
Yeah,
Do they have separate names?
Yeah. So lower bout and top bout are the different names. So a lot of them will stiffen these up and thin this down to make it move as much as possible. So this has a kind of similar concept as you make the
bottom one.
yeah, you make the bottom bout really large, but keep the top bout nice and small, so it sits lower in the lap.
So it also has practical reasons.
Yeah, because a dreadnought guitar will
Yeah,
sit right up. Yeah, you'll be maybe reaching over,
okay.
whereas that's still nice and comfortable to play. But the bottom bout
There's
is
a hell of a
getting
lot
on
of it
for
sticking out this way.
yeah, it's getting on for a jumbo size
Yeah,
guitar.
yeah.
See, that's
Yeah,
your old-fashioned dreadnought. You haven't
well,
got
that's like my Fender acoustic. That's that
Yeah.
kind of a shape.
Yeah. But it means also that this sits really high up,
Yeah.
and then you kind of have to reach over way more. And like the Grand Auditorium.
This is kind of more traditional for like American flat pickers,
Yeah, yeah.
who like seem to have always liked that kind of shape.
It was
But we're moving away from that kind of. The more you can cut this in, and the more you concentrate on this area, the better the guitar can sit on you, because it sits lower down.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay, more Marilyn Monroe shaped now.
Yes.
I approve.
so do I. Just like Queen said, fat bottom girls to make the rockin' world go round. It's got all those concepts. Let me grab a lefty. Yeah, I'll grab a lefty. The key's in the door already, look at that. The strings were a little bit old.
You'd have to tune it down to Dad kind. I haven't played in open tuning for about 50 years.
No worries.
So this is also velcro spruce on the myrtle wood. Back and size of myrtle wood.
Myrtle.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's actually just a straight classical guitar shape, isn't it?
More or less.
Proportions of it, but just like a classical guitar.
Certainly the square bridge plate makes
Yeah.
it look like that.
Pyramid bridge,
yeah,
we
yeah.
call that.
Beautiful work.
Pass it around.
But this is
That's myrtle wood.
myrtle.
Yeah. So myrtle wood is kind
It's
of
a fruit wood.
native to Oregon in America, but actually we can grow myrtle wood here in the UK. So that is UK myrtle wood.
same style of bracing, I guess the resonating guitar would be easier to swap to a lefty.
Yeah, and the saddle, especially on the single tone, because it's on what's called a spider, you can just move that spider around until it's a left-handed configuration. So you can, all you got to do is flip the nut or make a new nut, and you've got a left-handed version.
But why would you want to mess about right now?
Well, I wouldn't. I'm just thinking that someone came in looking for a left-handed one.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
You have to turn the neck around to the dots.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's no problem. It's like a
Oh,
banjo.
wow, I forgot what a tiny neck it's got.
Yeah, it's joined on the 12th, that one.
What's happened to the harmonic?
Yeah.
Well, listen, that guitar's been hanging on the wall for some time, so it will take a little while to wake the thing up.
Patrick James Eggle.
It's kind of lovely. Once you kind of get to grips with it, normally your hand's here, and suddenly it's
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
That's
Is that his name there?
No, it's just the detail
Oh yeah.
on there.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of difference, eh? You kind
it's
of
almost
muscle
like playing an
memory is
octave
out.
mandolin.
Yeah.
Feeling that's
Yeah.
even shorter than that, really. No, it's there. It's beautiful. What's the inlay?
It's a
Do
Celtic.
you know? Yeah,
inlay.
not the Celtic knot, but is it the same as? No, it's not.
The wood,
Yeah.
yeah, the wood material. I'm not actually entirely
Very
sure.
fine. Very fine inlay. So-
I wouldn't like to say,
Well,
to be honest. It's probably a type of
Then you want to try a lefty? It's much better, trust me. You don't know
I'll
what
just
you're
pop
missing.
the odd string just to see how it feels, if I may. Because I'm curious about this since I first saw it.
Very specifically a sitting down guitar, I noticed. Roger Buckner will not repair my bloody file, so it's time that I told you it worked for right.
Oh yeah.
Some interesting chords if you try the usual ones.
Plus it's in Dadgad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Sorts of
realise.
right.
Yeah. And it's upside down. Jazz,
That's
isn't it?
that Ginger Rogers saying, Fred Astaire, I did everything he did in high heels and backwards. That's a lovely guitar, and it's very unusual.
Yeah. Beautifully
Is there a reason to
balanced.
choose the short neck style? I mean, just
Yeah, so the 12 fret body joint we touched on earlier, it brings that bridge slightly further down the body. So this is kind of like a parlour shaped body, but then enlarged. So it's about a 20% larger parlour. It's his body shape called the Etowah, or the model called the Etowah, which has its roots and traditions in the parlour guitar, hence the open headstock design. And
yeah, I
that
did wonder
slightly
about that. Yeah,
elongated body shape.
Yeah,
Yeah, so most 19th century parlours would be joined on
Yeah.
the 12th fret
yeah, it is,
with
isn't it?
the
Yeah.
open headstock And yeah, that bridge sits further down the body. There is a bit of lacquer pulling there, just behind the bridge. Good spot, Nick.
And it's interesting to have that, but what's obviously a Celtic style playing. You can play a lot of traditional music on it.
Yeah.
But interesting again with choosing with that shorter neck.
Yeah.
Because normally we would hit that harmonic and work above it.
Yeah.
And here, that's not so easy, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It means we'll introduce different ways of playing.
No, I can't do it.
I see this.
At least you're trying.
It's like trying to ride a bicycle backwards, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
With your legs crossed.
Yeah.
Once you work out where the hell they are.
Oh, I see a new challenge coming up.
Yeah.
Yes, just which end do you blow into?
There's a couple of very, very famous jazz guitarists, especially who are lefties but haven't changed the strings around.
Yeah.
I've seen more.
Mm.
Everyone thought Hendrix was till they watched closely.
Yeah.
And went, yeah.
He turned them around.
Yeah, he did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A super fine grained top.
One of the there's a father, son, grandson pair with a slightly Italian name, very well-known American jazz guitarist family,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them is a lefty, and just
He just turned it over.
didn't bother to change the strings. Went,
Right.
I can just work out the runs backwards, and
Much easier if you got guitar acquisition syndrome, isn't it?
I thought he had a power tool.
Yeah. I thought he was going to try and unscrew the neck.
Probably has got a motor in there.
Yeah.
There is a bolt on.
Any idea?
No, I was just admiring the way it was let in. Just.
It's perfect, isn't it? Yeah.
I try a couple of chords like that. Sorry, please don't. Stunning. Well, you can work it out once you realise how short it is. That's beautiful. Take it away from me. Gorgeous guitar.
How old is it?
This one is from the early 2000s.
Oh, right. It's
So it's got
20 years old.
20 odd years on the clock.
Well, how long have you had it in the shop? Just out of mild interest.
About a year and a half now, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is it
no,
your guitar?
no one wants it, apparently.
We've had a few people look at it. It's quite a lot of money, not gonna lie.
Go on.
5,000. Yeah. This would have commission been close to the 5-figure mark from Patrick Eccleston.
Would that have been a specific commission?
It's a specific commission. It's one of one. All of the Celtic inlay is something that you don't see on any of his work. The Celtic rosette and the Celtic end stripe there, plus the Mercerwood back and sides.
Myrtlewood. I'm going to ask my brother about this Myrtlewood.
You get some myrtle woods which just look like plain old wood, you know, and then you get some of the figured stuff which just is mind-meltingly stunning, you know. And this is some of the best I've ever seen. Yeah. So you can really see the differences there.
It's just such a pretty guitar.
You'd almost want to buy it and change it right-handed, wouldn't you?
Do you know what the brace
No.
is? Is it ordinary X-brace?
He doesn't want to do the redecoration.
It's like a traditional parlour brace in that. So it does have an X brace.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does have an X brace
With
with
extra braces below. one of
yeah,
the
like a partial
loops.
fan.
Yeah, I can see the myrtle's right when it's untreated there.
It's quite a white wood. So the
Yeah.
finish does bring out the yellows in it.
Mm.
It might have.
It is, it's really,
Oh yeah, I think that's untreated on the
yeah,
inside.
yeah.
Yeah.
Such a weird grain, I mean, beautiful. Like a fruit with grain.
Yeah. So if you have a look at this one again, especially with your torch, so that internal's been
Shut the torch on the side.
Doesn't quite work with them.
that internal's been shellacked.
Oh yeah. Ah yeah.
So there is a shellac finish on the inside of this, which helps with the environmental side. And it's the same with the Brendan O'Gorman
I
one.
mean, as in moisture and heat and damp,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not radically being affected as
Yeah.
much as a colour.
Yeah. It helps seal it on all sides. So the whole thing internally has a finish on it as well as externally. Yeah. And this is also another thing that we're seeing much more in modern acoustic lutherie. It takes a lot of time, and generally they don't make any more money from it. But it just means that their instruments are stable over the long
How
term.
is the luthier business? I mean, are there up and coming luthier? I mean, is it still going well enough for people
It's,
to want to train? And
it's getting stronger and stronger.
okay.
However, the training is the difficulty. Generally, if you want to train, people would either go to America or places in Europe. There is, so Brendan studied at a university in London, but it's pretty much the only one in the UK that does any kind of modern lutherie courses. So it's not just guitars, it's cellos, it's mandolins, it's kind of any stringed instruments. So yeah, the study of it is getting harder unless you can apprentice under already established luthier. However, more and more people, yeah, like Jake for instance, but more and more people are becoming open to the world of buying luthier-made instruments. They're more like heirloom guitars in the sense that it's an instrument that it does cost a bit of money, but you can pass it down the generations. It will stand the test of time, and it's always going to be worth a lot of money. So it's like an investment piece. But
Quite a lot from my early file to what it's worth now.
yeah, and you end up with a guitar that's full of character, you know. So all of these instruments, they're reflecting the people that have built them, you know. It's an extension of yourself playing it, but themselves who've built it.
We can talk about lots of money, but if you think of this guy hardly makes a minimum wage.
Yeah.
If you say how many hours he's put into this guitar. So in that sense, it's lots of money. You know?
If he gets £4 an hour out of that, then he's doing well.
Really.
Yeah.
So there's making money out of the luthier business is really hard. So you need to have the artistry as well, you know, to get it together. And I myself, you know, we went all over Europe. We've been last few years over the UK to find the guys who had that spot on. Because there's plenty of people building, and now of course on YouTube you see them build a guitar in 5 minutes. You never see anybody tune the thing up or play the thing, you know. But we've seen a lot of guitars. Oh yeah, that's pretty, and that's about where it stops, you know. And for all the years we've been doing it, to bring guitars into this shop, for guitars where we think this has got it. Well, that has been a long journey with not great results, you know. I mean, we're looking only at a number of brands where we're now finally stocking them, and we've got to finally those guys to produce lines of them. But for one guy to make 10 guitars in a year is a really hard push. 10 guitars in a year, you're not going to make much of a living out of that. We really need to step it up to 20 or more. And yeah, before you get to that kind of level, then you're quite up there, you know, and you're still not a man who drives a fancy car, you know. Yeah. So it's a tough road. Yeah.
And woods are getting more and more expensive.
Yeah.
So like that myrtle wood back and sides, for instance, that would cost you, just for the material of the back and the sides, probably about 600 quid as a luthier. So, and the black limber is a good 300 in that, at least, minimum. Yeah. So because that's UK grown, it commands the premium, because normally the myrtle woods you find are either American or Brazilian. Yeah. So UK grown tone woods are few and far between. You know?
Of course, you can buy wood anywhere, but to buy woods of that grade and quality, that's very hard. And you want woods with a certain age to it. The more the wood ages, the more the cellulose retracts, the sugar contents crystallizes, the more you get small pore into the wood, the more flexible the wood becomes, the better the sound of the wood. So that's why a lot of acoustic players looking for older guitars, because they already had this kind of aging process. This is like your bottle of wine. Don't think the older the guitar, the better it is, because it's also like a bottle of wine.
Some of them are corks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the world of Martin collectors, for instance, they're looking now guitars between the 60s and the 50s. They're not looking for pre-war Martins.
Because everyone used to rave about Martin
Yeah,
1927, whatever the other.
Yeah.
That's the
But
best. The best.
Back in the
Yeah.
2000s.
but that's Finneker now.
Oh, so the date follows the date, if you see
Yeah.
what I mean. There's
Yeah.
a kind of a cut-off date.
There's
about
that kind
the
of
past.
period. Yeah.
Ah.
Once it goes over, I want to say over 100 years old, but it's more like 80, you know.
Yeah, 60 days.
Yeah, 60 to 80 years
Where the optimum.
is like premium. Anything 80, 100 and 100 onwards, the woods start getting brittle.
Is that
old.
similar, in reality, the same for a Stradivarius? You know, that just that people, the name is.
Yeah. Yeah, very much the same.
Yeah.
And the thing is, with guitars, it's less of a thing, you know. So Brendan, Jake, Frank, Patrick, they can build a guitar, start to finish, and there will be variances in the sound, but it will always command the value of how of their models, you know. So Jake has two base prices, for instance. One's 3,000 and one's the higher end, so it depends on what he's made, but the base price is 5. So he knows that if he builds them with certain things, they're always going to be worth that. However, where the money comes in with violins like the Stradivarius, you could get a master builder who's built it start to finish, and they don't know the value until they've played the first note. And it could be dull as a dodo, and then it goes in the fire, you know. But it could just ring out and fill the whole room, and that's a £200,000 violin, you know. And they do not know until they, play the first note. So it's a completely different process altogether, really. It's the same thing with bagpipes. So you get people that make bagpipes, all handmade,
Very complex.
hugely complex instrument, and the intonation on the bagpipes is a massive thing, because you get different drone notes plus your melodic flute, and if those drones are slightly out of pitch, then you can't just kind of shave a bit more off. it's kind of scrap it and start again, and it makes a massive difference in the price. So again, bagpipe builders, luthiers, they don't know how much that's worth until they play the first note.
I was on Sky last week as well. Ross Ainsley, one of the best younger Scots pipes players, was there, and he was doing recording with Brigid, a wonderful young Sky woman piper who's extraordinary. They were in the pub in Portree, and they were just having a quick little session, and he was going on about his new pipes, which are a set of small pipes, and they weren't working for him, and he was getting really quite hacked off with them. He said he's going to have to take them back, and and then he pulled out this battered old pair and charged them up, and extraordinary difference between
Right, I need to get going.
Yeah, no worries at all. Oh yeah, you've got a dentist appointment, haven't you? That's fine.
Thank you very much. That was really, really fascinating.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, it was really nice sharing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
But,
Gave a bit more understanding to the world of acoustic guitars, the differences, why people hand make them, why the price is the price.
Do they let you know if they've made them, or do you just check in with them occasionally and go, got anything we might want to
Both.
house?
they're kept made for us.
So this one we visited Brendan and picked out our own.
You
woods.
see the serial number in that?
2123. Ah, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yes, yes.
WM.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
serial
really?
number.
WM then.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Ah, that is the serial number, the year and your name.
Yeah.
Lovely.
What's the event tomorrow?
So we've got
Technical.
the guitar maintenance
I need to
workshop.
let off. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank
Oh,
you.
God.
Thanks, Walter.
Paul's got a dentist appointment. He's getting a new set of teeth.
Oh, that's spoiling.
We need to sell a few more of these to pay for it. We've got the guitar maintenance workshop at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then at 3:30 we've got Malcolm and Joseph coming in for a masterclass. And Malcolm Joseph was the bass player for Grace Jones, and Massive Attack, and lots of other bands as well. So he's a world touring, world renowned bass player, and he's coming to do a masterclass in here. Yeah. So you're welcome to either. We've got them on Saturday as well. So Saturday is another guitar maintenance one at 10 o'clock again. So they're running every day
So
at 10.
I think I might have signed up for tomorrow, but I've just been told I can't because I've got to go and do something. But
Right.
I might email and say, can I come to Saturday as well?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to. Yeah. There's availability on everything at the moment. We were a bit late on promoting it all, but it's fine. Makes it a bit more intimate. And then Saturday, 1 o'clock is another Malcolm Joseph one, and then 3:30 is Charles Roper, who's an incredible kind of shredder guitarist, but then does a lot of like jazz fusion, and he's very, very technical. So that's going to be really good. Yeah.
Good set of things.
Yeah, a bit different. Just kind of trialing out, what this could potentially be. We want to do more of these kind of things in future and get a few more artists down to do these kind of more intimate masters.
So when you get the how to put your banjo back together because you really regret taking it apart to smuggle it aboard a Ryanair flight workshop, I will come to that.
Nice, we may do one of
Because I still
those.
haven't got this thing back together. I've still got a bowl with about 8 bits in.
Yeah. Sounds like you're missing a few bits then.
It's like there's so many rods and truss things and double bendy bits under the, banjo. It's ridiculous. I wish I just paid for it now on the flight.
Yeah.
Comes of being cheap.
Tuning a banjo skin, that's a good one.
Oh, that's a nightmare.
That's a nightmare.
All the way around.
Yeah, all the way
I'm
around.
trying to work out.
Yeah. So a good one for that is a clip-on tuner. So you put a little clip-on tuner, flick it, or they actually sell them these days, where it's like a banjo skin tuner with a pin on a spring and a clip-on tuner. So you just pull the pin up, let go, doing, and then gives you the
What should
tone.
the skin be at then?
Depends on the size of the banjo.
Oh.
Yeah, and what tuning you want it to, really.
Yeah, okay.
but tight. To put it simply, yeah, you want it tight. Yeah, yeah. And if you're using natural skins, soak them first. And they can be an absolute nightmare sometimes.
No, I've learned all about the nightmares of banjo now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Stupidest thing I've ever done.
And you thought tuning it was the hardest part, but it's definitely not. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll go and do it. Thank you very much to meet you both. Thank you
And
very
you.
much.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. That's great.
No problem at all. Hey.